Hi, welcome back to Legal Quilts after our break. Coming to you this lovely 4th of July weekend from the Smoky Studios. We've got smoke because of the Canadian wildfires. My heart goes out to anybody affected by these fires, whether it's through smoke or the fires themselves. Stay safe, everyone. I said it's 4th of July in the United States, 4th of July weekend, just in case I have any international watchers. And before the break, I said that we were going to do something with Quilts of Valor. I went on the website, found a scrappy pattern. I kind of liked it, but I decided to deviate a little bit because I had something going already. So I was like, that'll work. And it's called a string quilt. I'm sure you've seen string quilts, done them. There's a pattern on the Quilt of Valor website that explains how to do this. It's great. I'm deviating from the pattern a little bit, but it's very simple. You start with a square of fabric. Lightweight, you want something like a muslin or Kona cotton white. I think this is Kona cotton white. It might actually be muslin. It's been a while. Came from the stash. So you start with a square. I'm using 5.5-inch squares. You can use any size you want. Just add 1/2 inch to what you want your finished block to be. So this will finish off at 5, all right? Then you take a pen and you want something that's not going to fade away. Wouldn't say permanent. This is my washable one, washable blue pen, all right? Or chalk or something that's going to stay while you're working, because you're going to do more. It goes easier if you prepare your blocks and then sew them, because you can chain piece these. So you want to do a lot at once, but you don't want it to fade while you're working. This is also a great project to do some, go away, come back, go away, come back. All right. So you lay your ruler on the point there, okay, on the corner point there, and you draw a line down. Then you flip it over and you do the same thing. So you've got 2 lines about 1/4 inch apart, okay? And these lines, so you've got 2 parallel lines, right? These are your sewing lines where you start. And yes, it'll leave a white spot in the middle, and I'll explain that in a minute. Then you take your strips. Strips or strings. I'm using strips. Strings are usually smaller than 1 inch, but we know I don't like to work with that small. But if you're comfortable working with that small, go for it. And they don't all have to be the same size. You can use any size you want, but again, you don't want, because you're going to be layering a lot of them on here, you don't want something so big that there's very few over here. Well, there's a lot over here, because this side will be heavier than this side, and when you're sewing your blocks together, it'll pull. The heavier will pull away from the lighter, and if you put a light next to a heavy one, it'll pull the fabric, and it'll pull the quilt apart over time, and you don't want that. So keep that in mind if you're using various lengths. So keep in mind the size of your block. The Quilt of Valor ones is strips up to 3 inches, but they're going with a 10.5-inch block. I'm doing 5.5 inch. So obviously my pieces are going to be smaller. I'm going with 1 1/4 here, because, or 1.5. I think that's just about the right size. Now, how do you sew this? You take your strip and you lay it along. There we go. Start with the one that, as you're looking at it, with your point up here, is on the right, okay? And you lay your fabric on there so the edge is right along your line there. I know, there we go. It doesn't fall off. But as you're doing it, make sure it's along the line. And it goes to the left of your fabric. So you're working with the right side. It goes to the left of your fabric, okay? And you can have it up a little and over, because you don't have to line it up, and I'll explain that why that's okay. Okay? And then you just lay it. Make sure your line is there. And you want to use something washable just in case you don't get it right on the line right. But yeah, just in case. And, you know, using your 1/4 inch seam allowance, you just sew down. Okay? All the way down. Making sure you're on the line there. Okay. And when you get to the bottom, if you got, this is why you can string piece. See, you could put another block on there, but I'm only doing one block today. So you just, and you don't have to, again, cut it off. You just cut off your little tail there and put it back into the pile, all right? And you flip your piece over and press it down, okay? Just finger press it, you know, so it stays out of your way. And that's your first strip. Then you flip it over, okay? So again, you're always working right to left, but you're working top to bottom, okay? And you take another piece of fabric here, and you do the same thing where you lay it on the other line. You see we've got this other line showing. Make sure you can see that. And you lay your fabric. You lay your fabric, there we go, on the other line. Can you all see that? Okay, see the line? You're laying your fabric on that. I know it's backwards on film, but trust me, this is on your right, and this goes to the left, and it's right sides together. Again, you can put your fabric up there a little bit, and then, again, right 1/4 inch seam allowance, laying your fabric down, and you sew it down. And you cut off your little bit of excess again. Again, if you're doing this, you're doing a whole bunch at once and you're chain piecing. And then you finger press it over, and I know I'm using those words, pressing. But, and you see you've got a little bit of a white space in there. Trust me, that'll look really cool when you're done. Because if you do a whole bunch of them and you lay them out, once you do the block, you'll see this white space. It looks kind of like a little teeny bit of sashing as you go along, okay? And it makes a break. You can make a bigger piece in the center if you want, moving your ruler over a little bit from the point. I just had a small one in here. But you'll have this so that when you put them together with the block on the square, and you put this next to a block, you get a diamond shape of the sashing. You'll have one going this way, you can set the next one going this way, you can set the next one going this way. You can do them in groups of 4 so you can get a diamond shape, or you can do them all, you know, on the diagonal the same way. It looks really great because it gives that just little bit, okay? And that's your white for the red, white, and blue. Now then you take some more fabric and the same thing. You lay it, so you're working on the right side. Let's see. Okay. You lay the next piece over on top of the previous piece. And again, it doesn't matter if it's not the right size. You want to lay your ends, this loose edge here, this unsewn edge, with your right edge of your fabric, okay? And again, this probably looks like left. So you want the loose one, the open one, see, it's not sewn down, and you lay your fabric on it, okay? Again, if you have a different size, that's okay. Just make sure your edges, your unsewn edge is free. And you'll notice you can use smaller and smaller pieces because your edges get smaller here. Okay? And you just, or you can get more blocks done and whatever. Okay? Now and then you just sew it again with your 1/4 inch seam allowance so that catches the unsewn edge of the bottom piece. And you know my rule, the lighter piece, the heavier piece is always on the bottom. Well, your block is always going to be on the bottom. So it will always have the heavier piece. You'll always have your strip on the top. And you sew it down. And flip it over. There we go. Cut off some of the excess here. And you just keep doing that until your block is done. Alright? And you can do all one side or you can alternate sides. Now when you get to this corner, alright, you leave the edge unsewn. That's okay. You don't have to tack it down on that corner. Although I think some people do, but it's okay. You don't have to tack that corner because, again, when you sew your blocks together, it's tough to see because it's not trimmed yet, but when you sew your blocks together here, oops, there we go. When you sew your blocks together after you've turned them so that they're blocks and not on point, although you can do this on point, I guess. I've never done that. Somebody do that and show it to me. When you get to this point, this is going to be sewn to the next block, so that'll catch the unsewn bit, okay? It'll all get taken care of when you do that, all right? Because you notice this trapped it down. When you sewed that second one, it trapped this one down. And you keep going, but the last one here can be left unsewn because it'll be trapped when you sew your blocks together, all right? And the outer ones will be trapped by either the border or when you put the binding on. So it's okay, everything will get trapped in there. All right, so you just keep going, all right? And then we're gonna skip ahead to the next step, so hold that thought. What to do when you finish the block, because you notice you've got all these pieces here. So I'll be back in just a minute to show you that. Okay, we're back. We've jumped forward and we've finished the block, you see? And you notice that these aren't all the same length. You can start moving down as you get smaller, so you're not sewing all the way up here and basically wasting fabric. You see how these are stepped down, and that's so you're not wasting fabric, like I said. You want to make sure you're catching the edges of your base block. But other than that, your overhang doesn't have to be a lot, okay? You can stop further down. You can stop sooner, again, as long as you're getting past your base block. See, you want overhang there. But of course, that doesn't look much like a block, so what do? On the wrong side, and apparently these are actually 6.5-inch blocks, because when I lay my 6.5-inch ruler on there, it's perfect, all right? Which is probably why I did this. So my end blocks will be 6 inches instead of 5.5, all right? So let me make sure y'all can see this. I'm still working on being able to see things. There we go, all right? You just lay your square up ruler or a square ruler on the back of the block to the size you want. Mine happens to perfectly fit, so I don't have to be moving around. But basically, if you do, you want to measure from that center piece, okay? If you're going to do it from this side, measure from your center piece. And there's other videos out there to do that. I'm not very good at that, so watch those other videos. But mine is the perfect thing. It fits on there absolutely perfectly. And you take your handy dandy rotary cutter and you just trim it, okay? Now obviously you have to twist it and turn it. Oops, it might be time to replace my blade. That's just not cutting right there. That's okay, I can see what I gotta do. There we go. You don't want to use the edge of your base block, because if you slip, you're going to cut your base block. And then your piece will be, your block will be all messed up after you did all that work. And you see on this corner, like I said before about the loose, that's okay. It's going to get sewn to the next one. And then you do the same thing to the other sides. Okay? Just trim it down. Trim off. And that's why you don't want your ends all to match at the top. See all this waste fabric? You'd have even more if the ends were all the same length. You'd have a lot of this all the way up here that just got cut off. I should have actually started going down sooner. You get more cut off. You have more to cut off the closer you get to the corners, because you see how small this piece is compared to that piece. But that's what your end block looks like. That's what the final block looks like. You've got this nice little strip. This is all even number of fabric, so it's all weighted nicely. If you're off a little bit, like 5 on one side and 6 on, again, but you just don't want like one fabric over here and half a dozen over here. Kind of keep your weight the same. But that's it. That is a string block. You know, this is a lot like the lasagna quilt, where you just sew a strip, flip it over, sew the next strip down. String quilts are so much fun, and you can do so much with them. I know Quilt in the Day has a great one called Spiderweb Quilts. It's awesome. That's a great book. But this is it, and you just keep going and until you get enough blocks for the size of the quilt you want, and then you just sew them together. So there's your 4th of July. See all the stars and things. I had some firework fabric. I guess I just didn't cut any strips of it. But it's really cool, and it's 4th of July. And this would make a great scrappy quilt of valor for a veteran or served, or just if you wanted to make a picnic blanket out of it, whatever. It's a great little patriotic pattern. Goes together quickly, uses just strips. You can do it planned if you want, like you could do red on one side and blue on the other side or whatever. But if you're just looking for a cute little scrappy way to use up some of your, especially like I said, your smaller strips when you get down here, your smaller scraps, this is great for it. And it does go together fairly quickly. So there you go. That's it for this edition of Legal Quilts. The links will be in the bottom of the, will be in the show notes. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. All the engagement helps. It's really appreciated. Next time, in 2 weeks, it's going to be an awesome one that's kind of sciencey and mathy, but don't be scary because it's not really a lot of sciencey and mathy. It's going to be really cool, and I cannot wait to show it to you. But until then, please visit my website. If you want to see me continue to do these things, please buy me a cup of coffee over at Ko-fi. Again, these links will be in the show notes. Till next time, have fun, and remember, there are no quilt police.